Hey guys, and welcome to the Hobby News. Well, what a big lot of reveals we've got in front of us. So I'm a little bit late for this, so I guess everyone's already seen this. But you know, I want to throw my my 2 cents, I guess, in the ring and speak on these new miniatures that are coming, because it is pretty cool. It's a pretty hyped event. I know some things have been leaked and so on, and some of this stuff we've already seen and all that kind of thing. But ultimately, they're really cool minis. So I wanted to do my fair share of commentating on it, as I'm a sculptor and I love all this stuff, and anyone that's been listening to me now for this last year knows that. Well, if you don't, that's what it is. And yeah, some of these new models are pretty interesting. I definitely like some of the directions they're going in. So yeah, let's take a look at this. Hey, so we'll begin with, I guess, the Eldar, because that's part of that leak. The where are we? Come down here, this big guy. So we've already seen this, but it's a really cool new rendition, an updated rendition of this one, right? So, I'm assuming he's taller, bigger, all that sort of thing, and yeah, it looks really cool. I mean, if you're an Eldar player, I can't see you hating this. It's pretty cool. But let's go back up at the top and we'll just go through it. So the Reborn avatar of Cain leads another new wave of Eldari reinforcements. Yeah. So January has been packed to the pointy ears with reveals of upcoming Eldari models, including Rangers and Shroud Runners from the Eldritch Omens battle box. Now a full war host of new arrivals have made themselves known as at the Las Vegas Open. Yeah. So, they're getting a really, really big refresh. This is probably the biggest refresh that I've seen coming back into the hobby. It's really great to see. I really like the way this is going down. I talked about it in the last video. On these Eldar reveals, the language they're using, the type of I guess the adherence to the the history of what Eldar look like and their design aesthetic and so on is being carried forward. So whichever design team and management team above them were deciding on this, which would have been probably back somewhere in towards the end of 8th edition before COVID, all that sort of thing, this would have been going through its process, considering how large the release is. There's some really nice I guess design mandates or sort of directions that they decided to go down, and I think that any Eldar player or even just Warhammer players in general should be pretty happy with this release, because it bodes well for future releases as well. If this type of design flow goes through into other ranges, that'd be really amazing, right? It's something that's kind of unique because it is a Xeno race. It's not Space Marines. It's not humans. They're giving this kind of attention to something that's non-human, which doesn't always happen in many tabletop games. Most of the non-human factions generally, I guess, maybe are seen to be as less popular or that sort of thing in certain game systems. But really, that's kind of a difficult thing to really pinpoint unless you have the company's money stats to really make that true or false. But I think we can all agree that we all have a soft spot for some of these Xeno races, especially Eldar, and it's great to see them have a strong release like this. Whatever you feel about this model, about the avatar, it's going to give that faction more weight on the table. I mean, even just from a hobby standpoint, the kind of painting that you can do on this is going to be pretty significant. It's got some great large areas of I guess negative kind of space or flat space where you can do a lot of detail. These nice big knee pads here, you could do a lot of freehand on that. There's all kinds of areas across this model that suggest some pretty fun things for painters, and also it has enough texture into this model, enough cut detail and enough crisp lines to make it easy for newer painters to paint this up quickly and get it on the table. So I think there's a bit for everyone here in this release for the Eldar, not just for the painters and hobbyists, but for the gamers as well. And obviously a lot of the codex has already been released, so we know sort of roughly how strong the Eldar book is. And I think we're going to see some fun things for Eldar moving forward, both from a competitive standpoint and the hobby side. I mentioned in a previous news vid, I think I did the other day, that I'm going to be dabbling in elves and Eldar for the first time in I've never painted anything elf-like in the whole 30 plus years I've been in this hobby. I've never painted a single figure at all. So not even when I was working for the company, I managed to skirt around that job completely. So it's going to be interesting, mainly because they offer such a wide range of palettes of color palettes that you can do, and I think that that's really interesting. So I really want to explore that. So I'm putting aside my biases and coming to the party and having a go, and I'm going to try a little bit of each of them and see if there's something in there that I actually like, or maybe I'll come to the decision that I just don't like them, but who knows. But I'm going to give them a chance, and what a great time to be choosing that, because this year seems like it's going to have a lot of releases for elves and there'll be a lot to choose from. So yeah, like the only thing I would say about this figure from a sculptural standpoint is that it's hard to tell how dynamic it really is, because we're only seeing the one image. So it'd be nice to see a turnaround just to see how dynamic that pose really is. It is suggesting a kind of twist in the body, but it's hard to tell. So at the moment it looks a little bit static, but I'll reserve that judgment for later until we actually see a more 360 view of it. But ultimately it's a cool figure. There's a few little areas that are a little bit weird, like the very straight drips on the blood and this sort of very flat looking flames. But again, it's hard to tell exactly how that really looks until we see it in the round. So I'll reserve judgment. But ultimately a really cool figure. And then what I really love is this. So we're getting some other options. I mean, this is really where it starts to come to life, right? I really love these head options. I mean, that's great. So what does it say? For the first time, this massive new model comes with weapon options seen in classic Warhammer artwork. Get vengeance for the fall with a molten axe, or release your inner hoplite with a spear and crested helm. Yeah, so this is an awesome idea. I don't really remember imagery where they drew it this way, but maybe there is artwork there that shows this. But I really love this. I actually love all of these options more than the standard. The standard helmet's never really done it for me, but this is something that's really lovely. Like, I really like this. It almost gives him, like, I don't know, I'm getting really like sort of like either Japanese mythology or Chinese mythology kind of vibes off of this head, with the way the headdress is and the way the locks of hair come down and the facial features itself. It's really cool. Like, I really like that look, and the axe and the spear, and then obviously this sort of Greco-Roman kind of style helmet here. There's some really fun things going on with this. What would have been really, really cool is if they gave you like a secondary arm option where it changed the pose, like one extra arm that went in a different way or something. That'd be pretty fun. But I won't ask for the world. It's great that they've done that. And again, options. They're giving more options. This is a new thing. Normally, we've seen very sort of mono kind of fit build kind of kits, and here we're seeing a lot more choice. So again, whatever design mandate, whatever kind of ideas they had at the time of doing this, they definitely stepped out of what they were currently doing and kind of looked back to an earlier time when they were releasing model kits, and that's what this feels like. This feels like they're paying a bit of tribute to that heritage that we all want from a kit. Again, I said that before. This is the kind of thing that we want. We want to see these options. I mean, it's really not that costly for them to throw these in the kit. I know how easy it is to sculpt these. Okay, and I'm not saying like to this detail, but I'm just saying to create, different choices for a kit like this isn't that difficult once you've got the basics down, and fitting like a weapon into a sprue isn't that hard. There's going to be space for something like a weapon like this because they don't take up that much room, especially the spear. So having those extra little pieces in there is a really great thing. So I won't waffle on too much about that because we'll be here forever. There's quite a bit to get through, so we'll move on. So now we've got this, which is really interesting. So this is like one of those little teasers that they reveal, like they showed like the cape, I think, and a few gems. I think this area down here, but this is really cool. So this is Phoenix Lord Morgan Ra. Remember the old model if you're old enough to remember. It's kind of similar to this, but this is just way more dynamic. So here we're actually getting a nice dynamic figure. So I like it. It's cool. It's almost got that sort of Nighthaunt Age of Sigmar vibes with it. It's definitely got there's some simplification here going on in these shapes and forms across the model, almost cartoonish a little bit, but it's kept enough of the grimdark, I think, to pass. it's definitely trying to appeal, I think, to a wider audience, possibly a younger audience as well. You know, but it's got enough in here to where you can take it further. Like if you were to do this in a grimdark style, this would change the whole mood and aesthetic of this model. But it has all the key elements you want for an Eldar model, right? It feels Eldar, it looks Eldar. You know, the gun's great. It's kept all of the original kind of concepts for this particular Phoenix Lord, and you know, we're seeing something really cool here. So let's see if we've got any more options. No, it doesn't look like he gets extra options for this one. But then again, I guess Morgan Ray doesn't really need, you know, multiple options. That he has that one gun, right? Or at least I think so. So yeah, ultimately a really fun figure, and I'll definitely be, you know, if I continue with the Eldar painting thing, I'll definitely do something on this, because that's right up my alley, doing this kind of like dark cloak schemes with different color blends. You know, that's perfect for me. I can do some fun things here, and you know, hopefully he's not too costly. I am in Australia, so this could be like a whole wage here just to pay for this one, but hopefully not. Hopefully he's reasonably priced. So yeah, pretty cool. So we're getting that, and then we have all of these. These are the Shining Spears, I think. Yep. So these are the new ones, and again, really cool. So they've got all that nice crisp cut lines in there. You know, there is some simplification. It's keeping in line with the original, but we're seeing a bit more detail, a bit more sort of, I guess, a lot of secondary forms in here, a lot of smaller elements that are combining with the larger, the main forms to give you something a bit more interesting without overdoing it, without doing that sort of, you know, modern sci-fi thing where you just pack on a bunch of geometric shapes onto an object and call it sci-fi and then that's it. You know, it's relatively restrained, right? We're not seeing all of that just being tacked on. So, you know, pretty cool, and an interesting color choice for them. You know, it's all white. I don't know if that was the best choice for these. I might have done a more maybe blue faded maybe shadow for this one or something, but I guess they've got the blue helmets, so you don't want to overdo it on the blue. But apart from that, you know, really cool, and I can definitely see some painters doing some really interesting things. Like for me, I'm imagining sort of really electric color fades from imagine like a really fluorescent green into a I guess into a black or something, or even like a hot pink, like having like electric lines running through the front of the nose of this and on these edges, and then blending into a really dark base at the back, and then maybe re-highlighting up at the back here into a fade into like a hot color that goes into that exhaust, something like that. Like there's a lot of really crazy things you can do with Eldar, and I think that a model like this really screams for that, you know, because it's got so many good edges and so many good points that you could really change up the color across the miniature, which is really cool. So yeah, I like these. I think these are great. These are definitely the sort of thing that you want to see in new Eldar. I can't imagine that anyone's going to be put out by these. They're cool, you know, and they're definitely like trying some vibes in here. They've got like that sort of Greco-Roman kind of influence. We've got these helmets and so on, which is in Eldar's design aesthetic anyway. It's there from the beginning, and they're just sort of re-emphasizing some of that and bringing it forward, especially with this really light blue color. You know, this definitely screams Greece, you know, this light blue color here, and you know, they're not shying away from it. So I think that's really good, and that's very positive. So we'll come down here and take a look at some of the close-ups, and yeah, look, we've got some great heads. I mean, really, these days that I've been noticing, you know, their sculpts of faces have been really improving in leaps and bounds, right? A lot of those new Stormcast figures has some great heads, and here we're seeing some really good Eldar heads. You know, this is a great one. I really like this. It's a lot more expressive. We're seeing a nice frown going on there, although that could be the paint job, but it feels pretty characterful. I like it. I like the little top knot, you know, all that sort of thing. Little details like that really help these figures, and yeah, I mean, awesome, right? Like I can't see any problem with it. You know, maybe let's see if we can find a bit of a con here. I guess it's hard to tell because it's all white. I think that's really the thing that's difficult here, is that it's all this really clean white. So it's difficult to know just how good these shapes are, because it's losing a little bit. You don't get much definition across these forms. But yeah, I'd have to see this in the flesh to really make a yay or nay on it. But from the look of it, it looks fine. I mean, maybe this little sort of thing at the top here is a little bit strange, but apart from that, everything else feels okay. And probably this tassel on the back of the helmet, maybe chop that off and maybe put that onto the actual bike or somewhere else. but very, very minor things. I don't think there's really anything to really nitpick over this. I think you're gonna enjoy it, right? And then we see the whole thing together. Yeah, I mean, it looks great, doesn't it? Like everything feels like it's coming from the one place. The new Guardians, all of these new units, everything feels pretty good, but it still feels exactly like Eldar, or Eldari as they're called now. Yeah, I think that's great. We're seeing a bit of a side view here, so it's a little bit more dynamic. Yeah, I think the alternate heads are definitely better here. I think that because he feels a little bit static and top heavy here. So I think if we come back and we take a look before I move past these, yeah, I think these helmets are going to look these heads are going to look much better on this figure in terms of the movement of it, right? We've even got a little bit of a side angle here. It's on an angle, which is nice because it's in direct sympathy with the twist in the body. So I feel like that's nicer, as is with this, which is looking forward towards the hand. I think both of these heads actually fit this model much nicer in terms of just the angle and the way it's looking. See how this is looking directly at you, but all its twist wants it to be looking over to the left towards the hand, and it doesn't really do that. Maybe you can turn it. Maybe that's what you can do. But these ones definitely have a bit more of a twist, which is nice. So yeah, all in all, really cool for Eldar. So now that we've gone through that, sorry to rush through it, although it's been about 15 minutes. So let's move on. We've got a few more things to go through. So now we're on to AOS, and so they've shown off some Nighthorn and some Daughters of Cain, and we saw a little teaser of one of I think of both of these actually at one point. So they're getting their box, so it looks like they'll be coming soon, I guess sometime in these next few months, and we're seeing some pretty fun stuff. So again, this is very sort of nightmare storybook sort of slightly fun and almost endearing, but also with that sort of like horror element. And I love the combination. All the Nighthawk models are really fun and enjoyable, and there's such a lot of good area to paint. For painters, these are excellent, right? Because you've got all these nice flat spaces where you can do blends and different color combinations. You'll definitely be seeing me paint some of these on the channel because I'm into this sort of thing. You don't have to look at any of my Soulblight videos to see that I like doing these types of color blends. Mine go through like green and blue, but here we're seeing a more sort of, I guess, teal color or turquoise color, going into a very faded sort of pale green to almost skin tone there. So yeah, really interesting. Like this is all great, and I'm sure the rules are cool, but really it's the mini we're looking at, and I love the ideas. I love all the candles and all the really wacky little sort of those little candelabra things that they put on them. Yeah, just super fun, right? Like that's great. And then we have this interesting thing. So Death are getting some shooting units, which is awesome. Like that's something I've been pining after for I don't know how long. Ever since I came back in the hobby, I've been looking at them and just thinking like, well, it's been longer than that, because really back in Warhammer Fantasy days, when they first split Undead from an Undead book to Vampire Counts and Tomb Kings, that classic Undead, that sort of thing, they lost their shooting units, right? Back in the very old days, early days of Fantasy, you could have crossbowmen, right? There was a shooting unit, and they lost that. And here, look what we're getting. We're getting crossbowmen. So it's great. I love that they're looking back and trying to pick out the things that were actually good about previous generations of their product and re-bringing those back in, because that's something that I've talked about a lot, is that they often, because they're on such a treadmill, just going through them like over and over again, just coming up with something and then moving on to the next, they never get a chance to stop and realize when they've done something good, or something that might have promise, because they don't have time to really focus on it. They just move on. They move on to a new edition, and so on. And so you never really get a chance to see any of those good moments. And I'm glad they're bringing this back in, because yes, you don't want more shooting in the game, that sort of thing, but really from a modeling and an army looking point of view, having those different roles, those different unit roles is really important, because it gives you those options. I've talked about this before, armies that suffer from that, where they don't play in a certain phase, like Tau in 40k, not having any psychers, it's a problem. Armies like that tend to really swing in terms of their power level. Some editions they're really great because they overdo it on the thing that they're good at, and then they become too dominant, and then they nerf it, and then they become really bad again. And that's the same for things like Death Faction generally, not having the capacity to at least do a little bit of normal range, attack instead of just relying on magic, that helps diversify it a bit. So they've got another element that they can balance within the book. They don't have to make these super powerful. They can be pretty average, but it will give Death players a chance to build in a different way and add a new dynamic. And again, something for the designers to now balance out in a more even way overall. I think it's going to be easier when you've got those really, like for instance, the Fire Slayers, that's a really hard book to write and design because they're so sort of hamstrung by what they are. They don't have all those different bells and whistles that would make a more balanced force. They just don't have it. They're all little short, stubby dwarves running around half naked with an axe in their hand and a mohawk, and they're, it's a difficult thing. And so having this in Death is really awesome. So yeah, I'm super pumped. I love everything about these. These are great, right? I mean, everyone's probably already seen all these already, but great character. I love all this on leaning on the standard, all that kind of stuff, all the little pointing and screaming and all the different little looks that they have. It's just awesome. The Nighthawk range is great, and you'll definitely be seeing me painting some of these because that's exactly what I want for Death. So they've got my tick right there, and I'm sure a lot of old school Undead players would also be pretty happy with that. So then we've got this. This was another model that was revealed, or they showed the whip, I think. So yeah, I'm not sure what to think of this. I don't know a huge amount about Daughters of Cain. I know they're sort of like the evolution of Dark Elves, I guess, in some way. Well, it's more Morathi and her sort of progeny, that sort of thing. And but it's coming from that design aesthetic from fantasy, and so who knows what this model will do. They seem to try to push a lot of on-foot models, and it's difficult in a game that really wants you to be able to move around. It's hard to capturing objectives and all of that. So these type of units are very, very tricky, especially if they're meant to be combat units, that sort of thing. Unless the whole army moves slow, it's unlikely you're going to take something like this. You really want something on a mount. You want something that's fast, or something that can teleport, or something that can, move quickly or dynamically in some way, at least once or twice during the game, because you're going to need that, especially if it's a supporting unit or you have faster units. Unless this is giving some sort of great buff overall, like some sort of, generous buff to your units around it, it's unlikely you're going to pick this, right? But maybe not. Maybe there's a place in the list for it. Although I've seen from most of the lists that people run with Daughters of Cain, it's unlikely there's going to be points left over for a character like this unless it's really, really cheap. So then its power and its usefulness is diminished, and so it's hard to add a model like this in an army that has a god monster that's so prolific in pretty much every list, right? So it's a tricky one, but it is a nice model. It is cool, and I can definitely see some 40k conversions here. This has Slaanesh written all over it. It has, Dark Eldar. It has, as we're going to see soon, they've been doing some Corsair pirate stuff, so it has Corsairs written all over it. You could do like the Exodite stuff. You could do a lot of really interesting Eldar stuff here, Slaanesh stuff in both game systems. There's a lot of potential here just for the model and what it's doing and all this sort of thing. You could do some fun things, but in Daughters of Cain, I'm not quite sure. So yeah, pretty cool all in all. So that's all them. So we'll move on. As I said, we've got to get through a little bit. We've got a couple more to do. So yeah. Hopefully you're still listening to me waffle on. But then we've got some Horus Heresy. Now I was imagining they were going to show off the new starter box, the thing that's been leaked all that time ago, but obviously not. Or maybe they have, but I haven't seen it. So we're getting another, I guess, Bloodthirster, but a really big one. So I'm not exactly sure how big this is. It doesn't really say, but it says it's huge. So we're getting a massive Bloodthirster here, and really, the thing I want to talk about here is the design language from the sculpt. So we're getting a much crisper, a much nicer version of a Bloodthirster with this model. The wings, not so sure about, but just in here, look at the cut lines, look at the faceted surfaces of the horn, the spike coming out of the shoulder pad there, the trim. It's really sharp. It's really nice. It looks like a plastic kit. I don't think it is. I've been trying to look around for I mean, it's Forge World, so it must be a resin kit, but they're really pushing their sculpting here. This is definitely a a design shift in a lot of their big models. If you were to look at this and compare it to the other Khorne models that are in their ranges, I mean, this is basically, leaps and bounds ahead. Not so much in the wings, but they're a little bit sort of weird. But definitely this body is excellent. Like the way the sculptor that's done this has done a great job. Really paid attention to getting that nice sharp lines, because it really suits Khorne, to have these types of edges, and it's great for the painting. So we get to really visually see all of this highlighted edges and everything. It's really good for Khorne, because sometimes a red model like this can get lost in the detail. It's a tricky color, and you can get a lot of these, and there's a lot of, usually people put a lot of blood effects on it and so on, and you can lose a lot of the details, especially if it's very sort of textured like these wings are. But these are nice, good, smooth surfaces that you can do some really good painting on. So yeah, I really, really like this. I think this was a great choice. I'm not sure how useful it's going to be from a gaming point of view, but just from a modeling point of view, it'd be a really fun one. Again, I'm not sure about these wings because it's resin and it's Forge World. I don't know how great that's going to be, if this is actually going to end up being a resin figure, which I would imagine it is. Yeah, I'm not quite sure about that, but everything else about this is great, and I'll leave it there for others to, I guess, more passionate Khorne players to really decide on whether this is awesome or not. But I mean, look at the side there, the profile. It's a great head, it's a great body, great twist in the body. Like, everything about the actual figure is really, really interesting, and it bodes well for future Khorne stuff. I really like this. It seems as though Forge World and Games Workshop are sort of talking to each other more, because you can see in the display that painting quality, everything is being upped on Forge World. They're coming more in line with normal GW releases, and that's really good to see. This is much more visually appealing to look at than a lot of their older stuff. Not to say that wasn't cool, but this type of style of painting is really good for photography. You really can see the detail and understand what you're purchasing, especially with something so expensive as this. So that's really cool. That's good. And so finally, we'll come to that Corsair. So Kill Team apparently are getting an Eldari Corsair, and this is something that I talked about early on when Kill Team was happening. I think this is great because whether you play Kill Team or not doesn't really matter. It's sort of like the underworlds for AOS. Kill Team is for 40k, because what it's giving you is a chance for the sculptors and the design team to do interesting little things, little warbands, little tiny ideas that they can't do in the main factions. And then you get all these great new characterful models that you can use for your main armies and that sort of thing. Whether you use their rules or not doesn't matter. You can convert them, do whatever, use them as your general. Doesn't really matter. They're just great figures. And the Underworlds series has some of the coolest AOS models that they've ever made. Like, they're just great. There's so many good ones in there. I've been painting a bunch of them, and they're all really, really fun. Like the vampires, they're some of the best vampires that they've sculpted. They're awesome and really pleasurable to paint. And here we're seeing the same thing. So we've got an Eldari Corsair, and just cool. Like if you're an Elder player, I can't see why you wouldn't like this. It's great. It's like they're dabbling. They're trying to break out of the normal thing and make some fun, interesting models. And I think that's really good. If they continue to do this, we're going to see a whole line of unique, characterful figures that are super, different, that are one step removed from the main line, and you'll get some really interesting things. And that's great for painters, great for converters, great for people that just love that side of the hobby. But you never know, you get those gems sometimes, you get some of those rules that are just good. Every now and again, one of these gets released that has some nice rules, and you can use it in your army as is. You don't have to convert anything, you just use it. So that's all really cool. I like obviously I'm a big fan of blue-greens, so the color they've chosen is great. And as you can see, they're using their spot color as a magenta tone. If you look at any of my tutorials, this is exactly how you meant to do it. So that gives you a really nice contrast. It draws your eye to the most important areas. I would have actually liked to have seen, it's got the little red up there, but it would have been nice to have maybe had, it's really hard with this sort of mask, but something here to draw your eye to this. Maybe had this have a little lens or something, so you could have a little spot of red up here. That would be really nice, because then you'll be more drawn to the face. But look, otherwise, yeah, super cool. Like I like this. I think this is a good sign for future releases for Kill Team, because we're going to get some really great models. I mean, those orcs that they released, they were awesome, very characterful. All players would have loved to have those. So yeah, all in all, pretty good bunch of releases. Sorry this one's gone on so long. I was hoping to, go through that a little bit quicker, but I wanted to get something out there, just to get something out on the books, as it were. So please hit that like button, subscribe button. It really helps me out. And I guess I'll catch you on the next one.